Lights, camera, action.
Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast.
Hey everyone.
Thank you for joining us today. Last week we talked about Interstellar, which that episode has done really, really well. We appreciate you guys showing that video some love. And we're excited to talk to you today about our very first musical. So without further ado, today we're going to be covering La La Land. And I think we should just dive right in.
All right. So, as John said, it is a musical. La La Land was released in December of 2016. The director is, I'm probably going to say his last name wrong, Damien Chazelle. Is that how you say it, John?
It's close enough. I don't know.
Okay. It is starring Emma Stone, Ryan Gosling, and John Legend. The distributor is Lionsgate Films, runtime of 2 hours and 8 minutes. It's rated PG-13, and the budget was $30 million. Box office total was $447.4 million.
Yeah, you said it was a budget of $30 million?
Yes.
Wow, so they did really well.
Very well.
Nice.
Yeah, so I'll jump into a tiny bit of casting details. I only have a little bit. So basically the only thing that I found was that there were actually supposed to be 2 different actors for the lead roles. I believe they were like actually committed and in. So Miles Teller was supposed to play Sebastian, and then Emma Watson was supposed to play Mia. And I don't remember why Miles Teller didn't end up going through with it. John might have information on that.
I don't remember exactly what I saw. I remember when I was doing research that I think it said when the director wrote the script, because he wrote and directed the movie, when he wrote it with those 2 in mind. And then Emma Watson wasn't able to do it because of conflict with Beauty and the Beast.
Right.
And so then they went to Emma Stone, and with her being a little bit older than Miles Teller, they went to Ryan Gosling. Which, ironically, Ryan Gosling was up for the role of the Beast in Beauty and the Beast, but he wanted to do this movie instead.
Right. Yeah. And I'm so glad that they went with Ryan Gosling.
Oh,
I
me
could
too.
not picture Miles Teller. I don't even know. I mean, surely he'd have to be able to sing, but I've never heard him sing before. Can he sing?
I don't know. I'm sure he would have taken lessons or something, and I'm sure he would have done fine. And I wouldn't say that like, oh, I'm a Ryan Gosling fan myself, but he's perfect in this movie. Like, I really love him in this role.
He plays the character very well.
Yeah, so I'm really glad that it worked out the way it did.
Yeah. So some facts about La La Land. I have a couple about the director, actually, which I haven't really had before. But one of them is that the film actually won 6 Academy Awards, including Best Director, which makes Damien Chazelle the youngest director in history to win that award, which I thought was pretty cool.
Wow. How old was he when the movie came out?
Oh, maybe I should research
that.
No,
you keep saying facts and
okay,
I will
John's
find
gonna
out.
look it up. The next one that's kind of about the director is that the pool party that Sebastian is playing the keys at, and it's like a really humiliating job for him to have. Yes. Well, the singer of that band that performed at the pool party, the guy that plays that singer, was actually in a band with the director of this movie in college. So that's why he got the role in La La Land.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. I did know that the director was a drummer because one of his first big breaks in Hollywood was a movie called Whiplash, which I believe stars Miles Teller and J.K. Simmons, who's also in this movie.
Yes.
Yes, it stars Miles Teller. So that's probably why he was originally picked for the role, because the director previously worked with him.
Mm-hmm.
But that movie's about a drummer, and that was really Damien Chazelle's big break in Hollywood, because that won a bunch of awards too, and after that movie won a bunch of awards, then La La Land basically got greenlit.
Yeah.
So anyways, to answer the question from earlier, Damien would have been 31 when this movie came out.
Okay.
So
pretty young.
Yeah, really young to get Best Director.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, good for him.
Yeah.
So you kind of led me well into my next fact because it's about J.K. Simmons. So, JK got to choose between two roles actually for this movie.
Okay.
He got to choose between the restaurant owner, which is the one he ultimately went with,
Mm-hmm.
or Mia's dad. Both very small roles, but
Yeah.
I mean, I think Mia's dad probably gets maybe a minute of screen time when she goes back home.
Which,
but,
I mean, I'm sure if JK would have chosen that, they probably would have adjusted it a little bit.
Yeah.
But I'm happy with how it worked out. I think his interactions with Sebastian are really funny at the restaurant.
I agree.
Yeah.
So another fact. During one of Mia's auditions in the movie, she's pretending to cry for a reading, and one of the casting people like takes a phone call or something like that during it.
Super rude.
Yes.
Disrespectful.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this was actually based on an audition that Ryan Gosling did, and they took that story from him and put it into the movie.
I did see that when I was doing research.
Yeah. Super crazy.
Yeah.
Another one is that the opening scene is just a giant music number. They're all on the, highway, interstate or whatever, and just in a giant traffic jam. So they actually did not use a green screen for this at all. They closed down an entire freeway and filmed it there, which is cool. But I also saw that during the dance scene, it was 110 degrees outside.
Yeah.
So
That's
I can't
insane.
imagine doing that.
Yeah, when I was reading up, I saw a little bit about that it took them 2 days to shoot that scene. And both days it was over 100 degrees. So I'm sure everybody was miserable, especially those guys, the band members that were in the box truck. I'm sure they were miserable.
Yeah.
But I saw that in order to prepare for doing that scene, that how they planned it out was they built a miniature of the freeway and had little model cars and everything to be able to tell the camera where to go for each story beat and whatnot of the opening scene. So they
That's cool.
planned it all out that way.
Yeah. Okay. My next one is that Ryan Gosling actually didn't know how to play jazz piano before this movie. So in preparation for this role, he learned how to play piano in 3 months. He practiced 2 hours a day, 6 days a week. And John Legend actually admitted that he was jealous of how fast Ryan picked it up because John had been playing since he was 4 and he felt like he was as good or better than he is.
Yeah. And something else on that note, John Legend, obviously phenomenal, accomplished musician who is a pianist and a vocalist. He did not know how to play guitar, but learned how to for this movie.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yep. So he learned how to play guitar for this movie. And interesting fact about Ryan. So I did see that he learned how to play piano for this movie. But the one thing that I thought was super interesting and honestly incredibly impressive was that there were no hand doubles used for the movie. Because I could have seen, I feel like it's very believable that, Ryan practiced that much and that he could nail 1 or 2 songs. But there were several songs in this movie, a lot of songs that he played on piano.
Right.
And he played them all really, really, really well. And there are certain scenes in the movie that are cut to make it look like it is a transition to protect the actor to, not show that it's a hand double that's playing. Because typically in Hollywood, if it's, especially with music, if it pans down and you can't see the actor's face and you just see their hands, usually there's a hidden cut there and there's a double that's actually doing the work.
Right.
But that's not the case. That was just a shot choice by the director, stylistic, and there were not any doubles used for the entire movie. Every scene you see Ryan playing, he's actually playing that song. So kudos to him. That's incredibly impressive.
Yeah, he did really good.
Yeah.
So next one so we all know, if you've seen La La Land, that, Mia has that iconic yellow dress in the dancing scene and everything.
Yes.
So they actually took inspiration from Emma Stone's dress that she wore to the premiere of Amazing Spider-Man 2. So she wore a yellow dress there and they took inspiration from that to get her yellow dress in the movie.
Yeah, interesting.
Last one. So to get inspiration and just, just some ideas about their performance, Emma Stone, Ryan Gosling, and Damien, the director,
Yep.
visited Gene Kelly's widow. If you don't know who Gene Kelly is, he plays Don Lockwood in Singing in the Rain. He's like the main character in that movie.
Okay.
So they visited his widow because Singing in the Rain has a lot of the same style, like cinematography and music and choreography and all of that stuff. So they actually, while they were at her house, they accidentally let her dog outside.
Oh, no.
And it ran off. It took off.
Oh, no.
And so Ryan and Damien had to run through traffic to get it back.
Oh, gosh.
And I mean, thankfully they got it back and everybody was okay. But can you imagine like driving in your car and just seeing Ryan Gosling chasing a dog?
Yeah,
like,
that's true.
That
Yeah.
would be so crazy.
Yeah, that'd be wild.
But yeah, pretty cool.
Nice.
That is all my facts.
Okay, cool. Well, then I'll jump into some production details. The information that I have is very minimal. There was a lot out there, but a lot of it was focused on the director. There's a lot of interesting information in regards to the director and how this movie came about. It's a very unusual story, but I don't really feel like it's pertinent to what we typically talk about here. So I kind of cherry picked. I got some interesting stuff, but this episode's probably going to be a little bit shorter than usual just due to that. So with that being said, principal photography began in Los Angeles on August 10th, 2015, and shooting wrapped in mid-September 2015. Everything was shot on location in LA, so there was no stages, no screens, with the exception of some of the like those sequences where it's silhouettes in front of like colors and stars and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of that, everything was actually shot in LA. The shooting took about 40 days to complete, with most shots being done in one take. That's another thing that I found really impressive, and I have a greater appreciation for the director because he didn't like doing cuts and transitions to just kind of keep the flow of the movie going. But instead, what he liked to do was capture the performance in its entirety so that it was more sincere. And I thought that was pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
So speaking of the director, Chazelle, I don't know how you say it. He wanted the characters to be in head to toe, aka a full shot. So meaning that you could see the character, their entire body, and all the like music numbers and everything. He didn't really want you to just see like their top half or anything like that. That was one of his big things. And the reason for that was because it resembled 1930s musicals.
Oh, cool.
So he kind of wanted it to be an homage, kind of a callback to the musicals of those days that he loved growing up. Well, not growing up with, but going back and watching.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So then on the actual shooting of the film, the film was not shot digitally. So very uncommon for movies today. There aren't a lot of directors that do that anymore. But he shot the film on, this is really specific, but it's on celluloid 4-perf super 35 millimeter film with Panavision anamorphic lenses and a 2.55 to 1 aspect ratio.
I have no idea what any of that means.
Right. And I figured you wouldn't. And I don't either, at least not without having researched about it. And I know our listeners aren't going to know what any of that means. But the reason I say all that is because there's a very specific reason why he did this. So back in the day, in like the earlier days of Hollywood, there was this technology called CinemaScope. CinemaScope is an old film technology that no longer exists. But what it allowed filmmakers to do is essentially take a super wide shot, so something that normally you would not be able to capture in camera because directors were limited to how wide of a shot they could do, basically limited to what they could fit inside a square on the film, because then that film is obviously projected. But it allowed them to capture a super wide shot, compress it into the 35 millimeter square so that it would fit in there. And then when it's projected, it goes back into that super wide shot. So that's what CinemaScope did. It allowed them to do that, but that doesn't exist anymore. So what Damien did was essentially recreate a modern version of CinemaScope so that he could have those really wide shots that would resemble the 1930s musicals and whatnot. And I didn't really think about it like while I watched the movie and whatnot. But when I know this now, there are some really, really gorgeous shots in the movie that are super wide like that. And I think specifically when Mia and Ryan, or Mia and Sebastian, Emma Stone and Ryan Gosling, are looking for Mia's car. And then they do that big dance number kind of overlooking the valley and whatnot.
Yeah.
There's some really cool wide shots in there. And that was only possible because they did this.
Yeah. Cool.
So, yeah, I thought that was super cool. And then last but not least, I have, actually, I was just talking about this. So perfect segue here. So that very scene where they're looking for Mia's car, that was a 6-minute long sequence where they're looking for her Prius. That was shot at golden hour as one continuous shot. So are you familiar with golden hour?
Yes. And I also read some of this too.
Okay. So yeah, golden hour is basically, sometimes it's referred to as magic hour, but it's when it happens twice a day. Each day it's either right at sunrise or basically right before sunset, but it's when the sky is lit up with those red and orange hues. That's golden hour. And there are a lot of Hollywood movies that like to capture this because it's very artistic and really pretty. So this scene was shot at golden hour, and it was one continuous shot. So they had to capture the entire 6-minute performance of them talking, walking, dancing, singing, all of that in one take. And if they messed up, then they had to stop and redo it. So it took them 8 takes and a total of 2 days to shoot it because golden hour doesn't last hardly any time at all. So their time was very limited. But Ryan and Emma finally nailed it, and when they did, everybody erupted and went nuts.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So that's all I have as far as production details go. So I think we can just move on to our opinions of the movie, our likes, our dislikes. So I'll start off. I'll ask you, how would you rate the movie on a scale of 1 to 100?
It's hard. I was going to ask you first so I could get a gauge for what you're doing because I really love this movie. It's very different than anything else we've talked about.
Yeah.
So it's hard for me to gauge it based off of other similar type movies, if that makes sense, like other musicals and stuff.
Right.
Oh, I'm leaning toward like a 91.
Okay. Yeah, I'm right in that neighborhood too. I was originally thinking like 91, but I think I'll probably score it as, I'm going to say a 93.
Okay, so why higher? Do you have a deeper appreciation for it now that you've learned all that stuff about the director and everything?
I wouldn't say so. I don't think that anything changed. Just when I think back about the movie, I really do like this movie. Like it's a really good, enjoyable movie. I think that I could really watch it like at any time and enjoy it. I don't feel like it's like there's some movies that I love, but if it's like a super action heavy movie, I'm not always in the mood to watch that. If it's like 9 a.m. on a Saturday and I have nothing to do, which I don't watch movies that often at that time. But let's say I do, I might not want to start the day off with, like Terminator 2 or something. I don't know. But anywho, yeah, I just really enjoy this movie. I think one thing that, like, for me, I'm not huge on musicals. You know this, and I know I've said it on the podcast before. But something that's special and unique about musicals in contrast to pretty much every other genre that's out there, I feel like musicals kind of capture imagination and wonder really, really well without feeling like, oh, that was weird. Like the sequence where Mia and Sebastian are dancing, both at the end of the very end of the movie and in kind of the middle where they're at like the like the stargazing place and whatnot.
The observatory.
Yes, the observatory. I was blanking there. Thank you. In both of those instances, like in one instance, they just like start floating into the stars and whatnot, which like it's fine. It's a musical, you know, there's nothing wrong with it. It's the same as like, what I think in Greece when like somebody starts descending from heaven when they're singing Beauty School Dropout or whatever, or I don't.
Yeah,
I
know what you're talking
yeah,
about.
I don't love Grease at all. I wouldn't even say it's top 3 musicals for me. I don't love musicals, but anywho, just stuff like that. Like it happens and people just accept it because it's a musical, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think that's really, really cool. Something that is fun and different about musicals as opposed to other movies. And I can really appreciate that, especially in this movie. I also really like Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone's dynamic in this movie. I think that there's something super simplistic about the movie that just resonates. It doesn't feel over the top or unrelatable. It actually feels very relatable, just in the sense that like Ryan is a guy who has a dream who's really not taking any concrete steps to pursue it. And that's everybody, you know, at some point or another in your life, you've had a pipe dream that like you would absolutely love, but you're not going to pursue.
Right.
And then Emma Stone's character, conversely, is someone who has a dream that she's actively pursuing in every effort that she can. And that's relatable too. You know, at some point in your life, you've had something that you're passionate about that you're chasing.
Right.
And I feel like it really depicts the struggles of that, you know, the heartache, the frustration, really, really well. And I think too, when Emma Stone's character and Ryan Gosling's character first start like seriously dating, she calls her mom and is talking to her, you know, kind of talking Sebastian up and like, oh, he's going to open a jazz club one day. And then, you know, her mom, you don't hear anything she's saying, but you can pretty much gather what she's saying based on Mia's responses.
Right.
You can basically tell that she's like being skeptical and really doesn't believe Mia. And, you know, because Mia's having to defend him like, no, he's figuring it out right now, you know, whatever.
Right.
And that prompts Sebastian to basically go do something that he can do, but doesn't necessarily want to do. But it's a way for him to make a living and do well.
Right.
And, you know, I think that's kind of, it encapsulates the human condition really well. Kind of, especially in our modern era, you know, like, hey, what's more important to you? Your dream or a family? Or, you know, because that's something that a lot of people do choose, you know, like, hey, I'd actually really like to be XYZ, but at this point in my life, it's more important to me to have a wife and kids.
Right.
And maybe that could be super successful for me down the road, but, you know, that happens to a lot of people. And that's not to say that it's bad or wrong, but it's real.
Right.
And I think the movie does a good job of that. And I don't know. I really like it.
I think kind of to your point, like one of the reasons that I really love it, because I'm the complete opposite of John. I love musicals. Like any kind of musical, I will watch it. But I really appreciate this one because I think one downfall of musicals that I struggle with is how cheesy they can be.
Yeah, that's true.
And this, I would not say is cheesy at all. I think, like you were saying, it's very real. Obviously, in real life, we don't just break out in song or float around in a planetarium, but I mean, a lot of the problems and like, you know, character attributes and I mean the ending, it's very real. It's not something that's like, oh, this is like a really, you know, happy feel good movie. Like it's reality, you know.
And I would totally agree with you there, just on the note of like not breaking out into song at any moment. Like that doesn't happen in real life. And I honestly, it doesn't happen that often in this movie either.
No.
You know, even though it is a musical, I feel like every music number is appropriate. And I think most of the time the music numbers are used to convey emotion. And most of the time it's romance. Some of the times it's sadness. But I think it's just, I really enjoy that it's not just like someone's standing in their bedroom and then for no reason they just start singing and then everybody in the whole neighborhood is in front of their house doing a dance number, you know?
Yeah, I think the only part in this movie that's like that is just the opening scene, and I think that's just to kind of, you know, just intro it like.
Yes.
Yeah, like it's.
Yeah, and I don't have any problem with that.
Right.
I think it, you know, it's a nice introduction just to the idea of, hey, this is a musical that's set basically in Hollywood, and outside of that, every other music number feels right on point. And yeah, so that's really all I was gonna say there. Yeah.
So the first time, this is kind of changing subjects a little bit.
Okay.
I want to talk some about the ending.
Oh yes.
Because, so for those of you who don't know, like John hadn't seen this movie until he and I started dating, and I had seen this movie. Well, when did it come out? December of 2016.
Yeah.
So it came out a month after John and I started dating.
Okay.
So I went and saw it, and then I don't know when you and I watched it together. It was after that.
You
obviously.
had it on DVD.
Yes, I had it on DVD. So I was like, John, I know you don't like musicals, but I really like this movie. Can we watch it? And so John and I watched it, and you know, it was like, I feel like you enjoyed it, you know, like as it was going and stuff. But the ending, I still remember right when the credits started rolling, he took it out of the DVD player and marched into the kitchen like he was going to throw it in the trash can. Obviously not because he hated the movie, but the ending is so difficult to get through. It's very hard. It hurts. Yeah. Yeah. So, spoiler alert if you haven't watched this movie. Yeah. But the ending, I mean, you are hardcore rooting throughout the whole movie for Sebastian and Mia to end up together, you know? I mean, well, they are together for the whole movie, and then they kind of go their separate ways. Yep. But there's this there's like a big moment. Yeah. Where Sebastian pretty much puts everything on the line. He goes out of his way to drive to wherever Mia lives. Yeah. And honks his horn in front of her house, makes a bunch of the neighbors angry. She's super embarrassed, but he puts it all on the line. And she goes along with it. Right. You know, it basically seems like they're together. Yeah. And she has an audition and it goes pretty well. And, you know, they're kind of talking afterward about like, okay, so what does this look like? Like the movie shoots in Paris. Like what, like, are we going to try to make this work? What's going to happen? You know? Right. And basically they just kind of decide if we go our separate ways, you know, what happens. And we might, you know, might get back together. But we don't know. You know, and they're like, well, I'll always love you. Right. You know, I'll be grateful for the time we had together. Like, it's very sincere. Right. But they're more or less just saying, like, we can't keep going forward. Yeah. So, I mean, the way that they said it, like, obviously, the first time I saw it, like, I was sad, but it kind of still gave me hope. Like, you know, surely, like, it's a movie. They'll find their way back together. Like, you know. Well, they don't. Right. Yeah, they don't. They don't. And so it like kind of cuts from that to a smack in the face to 5 years Mia in the future walking home, and she opens the door and kisses some stranger. And as she goes and greets her little daughter, who's very cute, but you got this rando guy that she's with, and then you find out that they're married and that they built a life together. They have a house, they have a kid. Yeah. And they're going out for a date night. Right. But then it goes one step further to just really shove it in your face. Take that knife and just drag it right through your heart. They go into Seb's, which is the nightclub or jazz club that Sebastian opened, which by the way, Mia did not know about until she stepped in the door that he had opened it. Right. She did not know it was there. They just heard jazz music from the street because they had left the restaurant they were eating dinner at, and they heard it. They're like, oh, let's check this out. Right. And so then they walk down there, and then she sees the neon sign. Once they're finally inside, it says Seb's. And if you remember earlier in the movie, she drew the logo for that. And this is like
I don't know why. I've seen the movie 2 or 3 times now and I never realized it, but that Sebs is short for Sebastian.
You didn't realize
No,
that?
I never. I honestly, I never realized that until just we watched it this week in preparation for the podcast.
Did you have any
know
theories of why it was called Sebs?
No, I just thought it was a name.
Okay, well.
Yeah. I don't know why I never
Anyways.
realized it, but I never did.
Yeah, so anyways, they get into the jazz club or whatever,
Yeah.
and they sit down and there's just like a random jazz band playing, and then Sebastian comes out on stage.
Yep.
And is, like introducing the band, the players, and all that stuff. And then he spots Mia in the audience and, gets real quiet. And he's like, welcome to Sebs.
Yeah.
And then he sits down and starts playing, the song that is like brought up every, 10 minutes in the movie.
It's the main theme of the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then when they really get you,
Yeah.
they start, it's like playing this series of scenes of like, oh, what could have been if Mia and Sebastian did end up together, like it's showing like what it would have been like if they had a kid and what, like what would have happened if Sebastian hadn't said yes to Keith, who, like gave
John
him that
Legend's
job.
character.
Gave him that job that he didn't like, and like there's just all these like what if scenarios going through.
Yeah.
And it's brutal to watch, especially when it cuts back because it shows, Sebastian and Mia being the ones to go to the jazz club at the end and Sebastian and Mia sitting down and enjoying the jazz music. But then it cuts to her and her real husband. And it's like, so hard.
Yeah, it's brutal. Absolutely. I mean, one of the hardest endings to a movie to watch. Mm-hmm. And I still love this movie.
Yes.
I don't think I'd rate it any higher just because of how much the ending hurts. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean it's a bad movie.
Right.
Or that I shouldn't watch it or anything. Like, I hear people say like, oh, I don't like listening to that band or that song because it's sad music. Mm-hmm. Or why would I want to listen to that if it makes me sad? Like, okay, I get where you're coming from. Mm-hmm. I am very much the opposite. I really like listening to like melancholy music and whatnot, not like all the time, but I very much enjoy it because I feel like it tethers me, especially being a man, to my emotions, like it keeps me grounded and also in the reality that, hey, life is short. And I know Josh said this on episode 7, but life is short and I want to live it well. One of my favorite quotes from Switchfoot in one of their songs, but it rings really true. So, having pain, sorrow, heartache in these fictional spaces serves as a really good reminder, at least I feel like, to, hey, if you're not careful, you are going to miss out on opportunities. Mm-hmm. Life will pass you by if you don't seize the day, if you don't get out there and, take that risk or, take that next step or take that leap of faith or whatever.
Right.
So I think it is important to move past that initial thought of, well, I don't want to watch it. It's just going to make me upset or make me sad or whatever. I get where you're coming from, but just remember that these things do happen in life, mm-hmm. and that you should be intentional in seizing the day, essentially. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's a tough one.
Yeah, and I mean, one thing that I do appreciate, despite how brutal the ending is that, like when Mia is leaving the cafe, she's following her husband out. He leaves and she pauses for a moment and looks back to Sebastian, who is still sitting at the piano. And she just kind of looks at him and then he makes eye contact with her and, just gives her like a soft like smile and just like a nod of the head, like, like it's okay.
Yeah.
And she, does the same back. And so I appreciated that they did that just because, like it shows that like, one, they still love each other. Mm-hmm. 2, that, it's okay that they didn't end up together. And also I think it was his way of maybe even saying like, I'm all right, like, yeah. And, Yeah, because you can tell by the look on her face that she is like, concerned about him and that she misses him.
Mhm.
And so it's just kind of, I think, their way of reassuring one another, if that makes any sense.
Yeah,
But-
it does. I think it too, it kind of is a bittersweet moment because after all that, like, devastating, like that sequence of seeing them together, what could have been,
Mhm.
you have this really sweet moment between them where it's like, hey, more or less, thank you for everything you did for me.
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
appreciate you, and I'm gonna keep on keeping on,
Right.
basically.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's a good one.
yep. Okay. Anything else you want to cover?
I don't think so.
There is one more thing I want to say.
What's that?
So I meant to say this earlier, but do you know what my favorite scene in this movie is?
Oh, I don't think so.
So my absolute favorite scene in this movie is at the pool party when Ryan Gosling is playing the keyboards.
That is a good one.
Not
Mhm.
for any reason other than I just think it's hilarious how annoyed he gets that Mia requests, I can't even remember the song. Iran. Yeah.
Mhm.
It's so funny because he's like, you can't request that to a serious musician.
Mhm.
Like, I don't know. It's just really funny to me.
Yeah.
And I love their interaction there. So
I love also before that when he is playing and the lead singer is like giving him like gestures like put some passion into
Yes,
it, and
yeah.
it's like just like the forced like quote unquote like passion he's like
Yeah.
Sebastian is putting into it. It's pretty funny too.
yeah.
But-
And on that same note, when Mia requests Iran, the lead singer's like, yes, that's a great song.
Yeah.
And Sebastian hates it.
Yeah.
I think it's hilarious.
Yes. it
But
is.
okay, cool. Well, that's all we got for this week, guys. So thank you again for joining us. We had a lot of fun covering this one. And
next week we're going to be covering Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, the original one with Gene Wilder, not
Yes.
the one with Johnny Depp.
yes, the classic one.
Yes.
The best one.
I agree.
Yes.
Yeah, we might get some backlash for that, but
Nah, that's okay. I'm really excited about covering it. That's, I guess you could say that's a musical too.
yes, it is.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that is one of my all-time favorite movies.
Yeah,
Love
that's a good
that
one.
movie. So join us next week for that one. Really excited about it. We appreciate all the love you guys are showing the show. Interstellar grew at such a fast rate. Well, we've never had an episode get watched that many times, so we appreciate you guys. We're seeing new followers on our Spotify page each week, so welcome to the show. If you like what you're hearing, give us a thumbs up on YouTube. Leave us a comment. Let us know, what you like. Or if you have a suggestion of a movie for us to cover, let us know. But with that, we will see you guys next week.
See ya.
Bye.